All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Real Estate and Lending Landscape for Cannabis panel. Today, we are joined by two experienced professionals who bring a unique perspective to our Nevada evolving cannabis economy. Our first panelist is Dertrez Pressley. He's a commercial realtor with Spear Real Estate. And second is Michael, please correct me, Zufelt?
Zufelt.
I got it. Is the lender with One Nevada Credit Union. Together, we'll help explore how real estate and lending environment is shaping opportunities and challenges for cannabis operators across the state, from leasing and property evaluation to financing options and federal policy changes or constraints. Topics we'll cover today is current trends in Nevada's commercial real estate market for cannabis, the types of property most in demand and how brokers navigate zoning and use restrictions, financing challenges, emerging loan products for cannabis operators, and what lenders look for in a strong borrower, and how upcoming federal reforms like the Safe Banking Act and cannabis rescheduling could reshape the industry's financial future. All right, so I'm going to start with market overview, and this is for both panelists. How would you describe the current real estate and lending climate for cannabis businesses in Nevada? Is market tightening, stabilizing, expanding?
Good morning, everyone. So I'll speak about whether it appears to be tightening, stabilizing, and expanding. I can't talk too much about the lending aspect, as that's not my particular field. So I'll leave that for Michael. But from what I've seen, it doesn't appear to be expanding. It looks kind of like we're contracting a bit. Sales are down. UNLV put out a 30 to 40 page informational docket packet last year about declining sales, and we don't see a lot of expansion. Part of that is, I would say, the barrier of entry to get into the market, but yeah, I would say it's contracting a bit.
Okay, great. Michael?
Okay. Can you hear me okay? So I appreciate the opportunity to sit in on the panel first time. So thank you, Keoki, for the invite. Just a little quick background on credit unions, because they're different than the banks. They're regulated a little differently. One, they're nonprofit organizations, and to approach lending and banking in certain markets, community lenders, credit unions are, and they're basically niche lenders. So they don't do it all. They don't want to do it all. But when it fits in their wheelhouse, they do it really well. So I'm glad if you don't have a credit union, you should consider that as lending as well as your personal banking. One Nevada Credit Union's been in business for over 70 years. We're well established and well entrenched in the state of Nevada. So we know our market really well. And on the commercial real estate side of it for cannabis, you have some challenges, and they're multiple on multiple fronts. One is that commercial real estate is nothing like residential. So if you haven't already purchased a commercial real estate and have that as a foundation to starting your portfolio, commercial real estate is nothing like residential. There are just too many variables, unknown variables in commercial real estate. Residential, pretty cookie cutter. Give them 2 years worth of tax returns, your W-2, a few other items, and it's pretty well, they put it in the system, crunches the numbers, here's what you're pre-qualified for. It does not work like that in commercial real estate whatsoever. So the 4 C's of credit still apply to commercial as it does to residential. Your character, credit, capitalization, the 4 C's still apply. But it's nothing like, so if you're looking to get into commercial real estate for the first time, I cannot recommend strongly enough that you align yourself with a commercial real estate broker. Residential, it's commercial real estate agents, and in the commercial world, they're classified as brokers, commercial real estate brokers, because you're going to need to have an experienced broker help you through the maze of commercial real estate and all the variables, the unknown, your purchase sale agreement, to be sure to, what the third party's time frame is, appraisals, environmental phase ones, that sort of thing. So there's a lot to the commercial real estate side. And as for the question on how the commercial real estate market is doing in Nevada as it pertains to cannabis. So I would agree that there's been a contraction because the barriers to entry and the lending, as I mentioned with Keoki, that federal law conflicts with state law, and lenders are federally regulated as well as state regulation. So the state of Nevada's Division of Finance, we answer to them as well as we do the feds. So until that conflict, most lenders in Nevada are not lending on cannabis. That's a tough one. You have to go to alternate or lenders out of state. There may be some in the state of Nevada that's lending on commercial real estate, but I don't know of them because of that conflict between federal and state law. And so if you, I don't want to make the assumption, but if you haven't retained services of legal counsel that is experienced and specializes in state and federal law for cannabis and has a commercial real estate background, you need to do that. And there's attorneys out there. There's law firms out there that do specialize in that. Highly recommend, because it's a highly risk industry. It can be profitable and satisfying, no doubt about it, but there is additional risk to it. So I highly recommend that you retain legal counsel to make sure you don't go sight unseen. Make sure your eyes are wide open and that you're well educated, a foundation. And one thing, even though we don't lend on commercial properties with cannabis tenant because of the federal issue, we're federally regulated, and it's not legalized at the federal level. Now, if the Bank Safety Act goes in, or they change that at the federal level, that's going to have a whole new complexion on the market. So, but you need to go in with being knowledgeable and educated. And you have to educate yourselves. And all the resources are here. The state of Nevada, we're not even in the lending game on cannabis, but I can tell you that I've got to get accolades for the state of Nevada because I know what's on the street. I have a lot of colleagues at banks and credit unions, good friends of mine, and the state of Nevada does a really good job, excellent job of regulating the industry, which it needs to be regulated. So, and they do a good job, but they also offer excellent resources. And your investigators, there's a resource you need to use because they're out seeing the competition. They see what procedures and standard operating procedures work here and not so well here. So I highly recommend use that resource. It's there. I don't know if I answered your question, but you need to pin me down.
You did and more. Thank you, Michael. All right, Dertrez, I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. What type of properties, industrial warehouses, retail, or are industrial warehouse or retail are most sought after by cannabis establishments, and what's driving that demand?
So it's going to be industrial and retail. Retail, because that's where your dispensaries, your consumption lounges, but you can also operate those out of industrial space as well. The cost per square foot on industrial space is lower than the retail. If you're leasing, typically also if you're purchasing. And so those are the cost are the driving factors behind those. You might have a building that's zoned for retail use, and it's a concrete tilt-up building, which is lovely for an operator, because again, the cost per square foot, the cost per TI per square foot is lower.
Thank you. And with that, what unique skills or knowledge should a broker have to successfully represent a cannabis operator or landlord leasing to them?
Good question. I would say that a commercial broker, one, needs to be knowledgeable in retail or industrial fields, and then working with cannabis operators, you got to be able to pick up that phone and call the different municipalities, because as we heard earlier, they all have, different fee schedules. There's zoning overlays. You need to understand, you don't have to have a granular knowledge about the TI cost, but you have to have a general understanding of TI cost. What is it going to cost for this, for them to retrofit this retail space versus this industrial space? Do you have connections with qualified contractors? Are you familiar with zoning? Setbacks? Some municipalities it's 1,000 square feet. Some might say it's 1,500 square feet, right, from the distance between a school or a church. So those are, I would say, some of the skills that you need to have if you're going to work with a cannabis operator, and then understanding the risk involved both for the tenant and the landlord. I know there's a question, I might be jumping ahead, about the valuations, but if you are a tenant leasing a commercial space, you have to understand that there might be a premium set on leasing that space, because there's an additional risk to the landlord. If they're going to try to resell, it limits their buyer pool, right? Because they might need to acquire a loan, and they can't acquire a loan. They have to be a cash buyer, right? And so, they might be trying to put it into a portfolio of other assets that they hold. And if some of those assets, even if they're in another state, have loans on them, the lenders will say no, believe it or not. So there's additional risk, and you'll see sometimes a premium in regards to that.
Thank you, Dertrez. The next one is for you, Michael.
Yeah, he covered it pretty well, that you're probably looking at a premium on the rental rate because of the higher risk. And a broker, an experienced commercial broker, can help you negotiate that lease. And property owners will probably, in most cases that I've seen, that they will negotiate into the lease that, given provided 10 to 15 days written notice, that they have access to your financials, which is legitimate and fair, so they know the stability. And also they'll probably want a copy of any quality reports of the inspections from the state and county, so that they know that their tenant is in compliance with all rules and regulations of state and county and city ordinance. So those are areas that a commercial broker can help you navigate in negotiating a lease, either with a tenant or if you're going to be the tenant. So I agree.
All right, Michael. For operators unable to access traditional loans, what alternative financing paths would you recommend?
So there are alternatives out there, because it's a market that has a need, and it's historically has been initially been cash basis, which opens up a lot of scrutiny, obviously. So there are lenders out there that will lend on cannabis for the operating business as well as getting into commercial real estate. Now, because of the risk is higher, again, reverting back to the conflict between federal and state law, so the pricing, the interest rate's going to be higher. And it can be similar to rates of a hard money lender. This is something that you would need to take a look at, and your commercial broker can certainly help you with. But, you know, there's like a gold stock. There is commercial mortgage consultants that, and you can see me after the panel discussion. I'll be in the back. I'll have some business cards and can give you a little more direction. There's some mortgage bankers here local that in their capital markets that can help you. They have a book of lenders, both private and public, that can tailor the niche, like ComCap Advisors, Marcus and Millichap. Both of those capital markets can help you on lenders in the cannabis area, because they know, and they'll probably have to go out of state to get the lender. But there are lenders there. Again, it gets back to knowing the risk that the world that you're about to step into.
And thank you. And I have one follow-up question. What can cannabis businesses do to make themselves more attractive to traditional lenders once the market opens further?
That is a great question. So let me tell you what the two most time-consuming components of closing a commercial real estate are. Number one, bar none. It's number one at the top. Nothing even comes close to competing with it, is getting the borrower to provide the lender with the necessary documents to underwrite the loan. That's the most time consuming, because most borrowers are not prepared. And then they take time to collect the documents that the lender needs. You can preempt this and take a proactive and have your package ready, available, and keep it updated so that you're ready to go. Because the borrower is the number one most time consuming of getting that package. So have your financials, year-end financials, have your tax returns with your K-1 schedules and all statements attached. Have a personal financial statement, and you'll need to update the personal financial statement every 6 months. Lenders are going to require that. If it's 8 months old, no, they want at least something current. And then your liquidity statements. And the liquidity statements, in your most recent liquidity statements, that includes your checking account, your savings account, and any investment accounts. And lenders don't need to see the entire statement. Usually, typically, the first page of the statement is sufficient. And you can black out the account numbers. Lenders don't need to see the account number. We just need to see three things on those liquidity statements: the name on the account, the name of the institution, and the balance in the account. And that's it. So those are the basics. And then have a biography that / resume. Usually lenders, and that will kind of vary, but most lenders will want a bio and in a bio / resume in a narrative format, not in a resume format. So they want you to tell a story about you, because by federal law regulation, they're required to know who you are. And you need to tell the lender, who are you? Well, I was born in Las Vegas, Nevada in 1960. I attended the local schools. I went to college at UNLV. I majored in finance or business. I graduated in 6 years later. On the higher education, they want some more detail, and they want to know who you are. They'll want to know your management experience or employment history of titles and positions that you held. Again, that's part of the resume side of it, but it needs to be in a narrative form. Any memberships to organizations, charities, they want an overall balance of who you are, and you'll need to tell your story to the lender. You're selling yourself. So that kind of gives a...
I'm going to ask this question for both of you. I heard you speak to, Michael, speak to having prepared K-1s and liquidity statements and those type of financial statements. But what about the newbies? So the ones that it's a new business and they're trying to position themselves for, they want to go to a commercial lender, either being a traditional or non-traditional lender, or a commercial property, and they're new. They're one of our social equity applicants, and they've never owned a business before. They are not operating, so they would not have their traditional business financial statements. So they would probably be coming in personally, requesting support for their new business. How would they position themselves, and what would make them more viable, or as you may say, more, I don't want to say trustworthy, but a little bit more presentable to a commercial property owner or a commercial lender, be it non-traditional or traditional?
So a startup is the most difficult. And I have a franchising background, banking background, besides now that I'm with doing the credit union side. And so I've worked with a lot of small businesses in the franchising and SBA, Small Business Administration loans, and with that organization, great organization. So startups are the most challenging because 90%, and I know you're not going to want to hear this, but you need to know, and it gives you an alert to do the proper planning. But 90% of startups fail in the first year. And the reason, number one reason, bar none, that they fail is they're undercapitalized. So whatever you put together on your budget, your pro forma to run the business on, well, you need to boost the capitalization needs significantly, because there's going to be emergencies, unplanned expenses. And so number one is startups go in undercapitalized. And so you're looking at to put together a 5-year plan. And you need to do your homework and your research. And there's organizations out there that can help you put that business plan together in a pro forma. But that's the number one reason. So most lenders, including ourselves, we want to see a startup that has a minimum of 24 months in business. We want to see that you're established and that you know how to get through that first year and then the second year, because there's still an attrition rate over the first 5 years of any, it doesn't matter whether it's cannabis, pick an industry, pick a retail, industrial, or service sector, that 90% applies to all. So it has no boundaries on that first year. So do your homework. You're going to have to put the time and the energy in. You're going to have to ask the questions and get with professionals and utilize the resources in the back. Talk to other bankers. You can call me anytime. I'll do my best to give you some information. But you'll have to do your homework. This is one that you don't get to cut corners on, because this is your life. What you're getting into, your economic life cycle, and the system doesn't want you to fail, because you're going to be adding to the economic benefit of our community. So nobody wants you to fail. You don't want to fail, but you have to put the homework in. You're going to have to put the time in.
All right, Michael, thank you. Dertrez?
I would have to say that I concur with everything Michael said. From the standpoint of what would make them more appealing to a landlord, is the same thing. Financing, and one of the biggest issues you come across, we call them mom and pop businesses, is lack of planning. One of the things that I do like about the process they have to go through in order to get the license is you guys require them to have a business plan, right? A mom and pop, idealist will walk into a broker's office and say, I have this amazing idea. This is what I want to do. I want a brick and mortar. And you ask them, okay, great. What's your business plan? And they don't have one. You ask them, how many products or services are going to sell? What's the price point for them? A pro forma. And they don't have that information. So that's a big barrier, and you have to work with them in order to gather that information, right? Do you have a business plan? Do you know what type of products are you going to sell? What's the price point of those products? What's your break even point? All of those things are required. And so when you're approaching if you're coming from the tenant side of a commercial lease transaction, we're going out there and we're trying to present you to a landlord. They want to see these things. They want to see, do you have a 3 or a 5 year business plan? They want to know, again, what services, what products, and then depending on whether or not there are other restrictions within that plaza, that center, use restrictions. You might have another shop that says, oh, well, they can't sell 30% of X, product. How much of your revenue comes from particular products? I don't know if I'm allowed to say that. There are some larger companies out there that have massive restrictions, right, against other businesses' use. So that's also something that has to be, considered and factored in. But having a proper business plan makes you more tenable, so to speak, to the landlord.
Are we talking about big retailers? For sure. Okay. For Michael, how are credit unions and local financial institutions approaching risk in cannabis lending compared to larger banks?
Well, I touched on it earlier because of the conflict between the federal and state law. And so it's highly risky for lenders to get involved, and most don't. And there's another conflict that has arisen. We were trying to keep tabs of it, as I mentioned to Keoki when we were talking about lenders, because it's still not legalized at the federal level, won't lend, let's say, a multi-tenant property. And one of the tenants has cannabis. So say it's a 6-tenant retail, and one of them's cannabis. Most lenders won't lend because the cannabis tenant is there. The offset is that, well, what happens, okay, if you purchase that 6-tenant retail center and all the tenants are non-cannabis. So the lender makes the loan. But one of the tenants leaves, and the landlord decides, well, I want to diversify to keep the risk mitigated and spread out among the 6 tenants. and they bring in a cannabis tenant, how does that affect your existing loan? And that's one thing I wanted to touch base on is you want, when you do get a loan, you want to make sure you read the loan documents. What if that's in compliance with your loan documents? Because the lenders are federally regulated, and that could throw your loan in default. Now, lenders don't want to do that, by the way. The other thing that I mentioned earlier, I started the conversation with, is a couple of cases in California where lenders did put the loan in default. Those are scenarios that have happened in California where the administration, not this current one, it's a few years back actually, that the cannabis tenant was doing some things illegally. Well, obviously, big no-no. You're just putting yourself on the radar, and you're asking for trouble. And those tenants got it. They went in, and they shut the place down. One, they seized the property, including the landlord's property. Another case where they brought in a cannabis tenant to replace the original tenant, and the bank called the loan, put it in default because cannabis on the federal level is not legalized, so it put the loan in default. Well, it was interesting that particular landlord turned around and countersued of restriction of trade. And I wasn't able to find the update on that, but these are conflicts that, and most aren't going to feed the lawyer machine, as I'd put it, because the lawyers are the ones that are going to come out on top. All that's going to do is drain your bank account. So these are things to think about. So Keoki and I were talking, if we had made a loan to a single tenant or multi-tenant retail, we made the loan's in place, and one of their tenants goes away and they bring in a cannabis, would we call the loan? And I actually don't have an answer for that, because we don't want to, I don't have a solid answer for you on that. My inclination is, because of the test cases over in California about restriction of trade, I'm not sure we would throw the loan in default. If it's performing, we still have the same borrower. We know that the tenant's either going to comply or they're out. It's just the risk of if they do something illegally that could jeopardize seizure of property or IRS or something like that. But you already know that up front, what you're going into. So if you're willing to accept the risk, so my inclination is, I know this is a long answer, but I don't think, from our discussions at the credit union, I doubt we would put the loan in default. No lender wants to do that. They don't want to take the property back, especially if it's a quality property. It's performing loan. It's meeting all loan covenants and state and local laws and compliance. They're in compliance. I don't foresee that, but.
Thank you, Michael. Dertrez?
Can I just touch briefly on what Michael said? I also agree with him. If you're purchasing the property, you do need to read what's in the mortgage terms. That's not just an issue with cannabis, but with other uses as well. And if you are a tenant looking to lease space, your broker needs to be in communication with the other broker. A lot of times you'll have, you'll have people who will buy a small little building or a plaza, and they're not familiar with what's in the terms, and they think they can lease out to a cannabis operator without that without that loan being called, and that's not the case. So then you have a conflict where you've signed a lease 5, 10, 15 years on a space where you won't be able to operate because they'll default on the loan. It'll go into foreclosure. The servicer will take it back. They'll evict the tenant, and then again you have a lawsuit on your hands. So that is something that that you want to consider.
Thank you. So my next question is for you. So for a cannabis operator looking for a lease in the state of Nevada, and you being a commercial real estate specialist, what would be your approach if they were to come to you and say, hey, this is what I'm looking for, understanding the federal landscape? What would be your approach?
Good question. So yeah, one is obviously that they have the licensing. Again, a lot of times you'll have mom and pop businesses who are not very familiar with the process, and they might own. I've had clients that own 3, 4 smoke shops and said, I want to open up a dispensary, and have no idea what the actual process of opening up a dispensary. I've had clients who have owned multiple hookah lounges, and they want to open up a consumption lounge. And again, have no actual idea as to what the process is. They just think, well, I have a hookah lounge here, here, and here, and I know how to run a hookah lounge, so I can run a consumption lounge, and it should be the same. And then you get to the nitty gritty of it all, and they're like, oh, I didn't realize it was going to cost this much for the licensing, and I didn't realize there were going to be these restrictions and all of these things, right? So one is the licensing. You get to a point as a commercial broker where when somebody comes to you and says, I want to open up a cannabis business, you ask them if they have, they used to call it a medallion. Is it still called a medallion?
No, it's just
okay, just a license. And if they say no, you say, I'm sorry, I can't help you. If they say they have those, if they have that license, and they have whatever municipal area that you're going into, well, then we sit down, and it doesn't happen overnight. We're going to have a good, week or two worth of discussion about what it is that you actually want to do. Again, the products you're gonna sell, the services that you're gonna offer. Do you need foot traffic? Do you need, what type of signage? Because that's important, right? And then there are restrictions on the type of signage that you can have, depending on the municipality as well. So you're going to sit down and you're going to have a conversation with your broker about all of these things over the course of a week or two before we actually start the process of going out and looking for a space for you. And then it's understanding, again, when we're reaching out to other brokers who have done this before, who have worked in the business. You have brokers that specialize in tenant rep, those who specialize in landlord rep, and then reaching out to those that have done it, because it makes the process a little bit easier. Sometimes you might have to look off market, and that can take a little bit longer. You might find a property that fits the zoning for that municipality. That it's likely, we can't ever guarantee anything, but it's likely you're going to get that special use permit or the conditional use permit. But the owners aren't knowledgeable about the process at all. You wouldn't believe how many properties there are, like that around town. Somebody bought a property back in the 70s and their parents passed away and they own it. They haven't done anything with it. And it's in an area where it can be used for cannabis use, but they're just not, they're not familiar. And so you reach out to, you find out who those owners are, you reach out to them and you start that process. I don't know if that actually answered the question, to be honest.
It did partially. And I know we had a conversation about when a broker and understanding your broker that you're looking at commercial real estate as far as leasing is concerned. You want to go with a broker that understand the cannabis landscape and understanding that it is some federal restrictions. So when they are looking for ownership, and when he speak about off-market properties, he's speaking of those owners that do not have a federal loan. And so you want to make sure that you are with a broker that understand that and that's going to be willing to work with you and do the due diligence and the work for you to identify those properties and those property owners that will make it a little bit easier for you to get in on a lease because they do not own, they do not have a federal loan that would run the risk of coming due if a cannabis establishment were to move into that property. My next question is for both. How do you see the lending terms and real estate valuation changing if the federal government reschedules cannabis or if the Safe Banking Act passes?
Well, that's what needs to happen on the Safe Banking Act. So it opens it up for lending. The first thing, the benefit you're going to see is lower interest rate pricing of the loan because now it's legalized. The risk is mitigated that it's now federal and there's not that issue of it. There still will be risk because of the regulatory oversight that is in place and the market itself. So that's going to open up a lot of doors. That would alleviate, and obviously for the landlord, the tenant, you've now got a place to park your money other than a safe that's off-site, unmarked, and secure. So it opens up a lot. It's just going to make the market a lot easier, and then it opens up the demand other than the barriers to entry for the product and service itself. I see that would probably open up on the commercial real estate side for higher demand because the banking is a big issue. It's like towards the top, second to the barriers to entry and the regulatory oversight. And again, that needs to be in place. But that would be a real positive. And can I mention one item on when you get into a commercial loan, and whether it's for inventory or equipment, maybe even a partnership buyout or commercial real estate side. I cannot emphasize this enough because I see it almost daily. Read your loan documents. And there's two areas I really want to focus on for you to be aware of. So when you get a loan from a lender, you need to know what their pricing is based on. What index are they attaching the pricing? Is it to the prime rate? Is it to the treasuries? Is it to the overnight fund rate? Is it to the LIBOR? Because it makes a difference on your pricing. It makes a big difference. And you need to know what your pricing is based on. And the second part of the pricing, is it fixed or is it variable? Now, you could be told that it's fixed, but it may be fixed on a quarterly. It adjusts quarterly. Some loans out there are adjusting because I see them. I get to refinance them after 2 years. And I'll give you a perfect example. Earlier this year, I refinanced a commercial real estate loan. And 4 years ago, the loan started at a 4% rate. By the time I got it 4 years later, it was at 9.5%. And it was killing their cash flow because they didn't take the time to read their loan docs. And so I can't emphasize that enough. It's boring. It's legalese. It's a lot of pages, but you have to do it. And the other thing is the covenant section of the loan docs. What are you restricted to do? What are you obligated to do? For example, on an annual basis, you'll be required to provide to your lender certain documents, your financials, your tax return updated personal financial statement, current liquidity statements on an annual basis. If you don't provide it, it could throw your loan in default, but you wouldn't know that unless you read it. Or if the loan officer at whatever institution discloses that, well, you're busy trying to get your business off the ground, and you may not remember a year later. So you need to read your loan docs, and those are two areas I really want you to zero in on: your pricing and the covenants.
Thank you, Michael. Do you have any feedback?
Yeah. So in regards to the federal banking standards and the Safe Banking Act, for me, I think it just opens up greater access for more individuals to actually be able to participate in the market. A lot of the those that are in the equity program here and across the U.S. don't necessarily have access to the funds necessary to get involved in the industry, and so that allows, again, just greater access.
All right, my final question for the panel, and then we'll go to the audience for questions. What's one piece of advice you'd offer to operators looking to position themselves for long-term financial success in this evolving market?
Planning.
Well, I've given you plenty of advice. Where should I start? Do your homework. Put the time and effort into it. Don't second guess. Don't take the shortcuts. Some of it will be painful, but you have to do it. You want to be successful. We want you to be successful. You want to be successful. Do your homework.
Thank you both for joining me on this panel today. Does anyone have any question for our panelists? Sure. Yeah, stand up.
Important is to have like a business plan and a pro forma. So my kind of biggest issue with that is like it's really like multifaceted, and it's like how to begin with, like there's no like proven models right now as far as how a lounge is even going to work. So how much weight does a pro forma at that point really hold? Like, what are we just generating numbers, and it's all just saying like we're going to expect this amount of people to come in. We're going to. It's even hard to figure out how much the cost of the goods are going to be, because it's not like the dispensaries are just giving you a price list. Even if you ask them, it's like so many layers of people you got to even reach to figure out how much your goods are going to cost. So, and then my second part to the question is kind of like, do you guys have any recommendations as far as like what's the best way for someone like me who's been basically contemplating and going through so many different scenarios and different business ideas, like how can a lounge like generate any sort of income, because it's a really low markup when you consider it, and at the same time it's not going to have like a high, in my opinion, it's not going to have like a high amount of people coming in and out sort of thing. So we're expecting people to sit there for a while and not necessarily spend a lot of money, right?
I'll address the first question and do my best to address the second one. So your pro formas at this point are estimates, right? You haven't been in business for 5 years, so we're not working with exact numbers. And that's something that your broker knows. That's something that the broker on the other side knows. That's something that they're going to explain to the landlord. But what it does show is that you put thought and consideration into your project, right? That's basically what it's showing. We estimate that if we're selling X amount of product at this price, we should bring in this. Our overhead cost is X. Our ROI is going to be such and such. But they're just estimates, and everybody knows that they're just estimates from the commercial real estate side. From the lending side, they might see a little bit differently, but ultimately it shows that there's actual thought and consideration that's being put into that's being put into your business idea, right? They're not going to take those as gospel. I have some thoughts about the consumption lounges, but I think that they need to like loosen up a little bit on some of the regulations. A lot of the retail that we see here, like I would say since the pandemic, are more experience user friendly, right? You go to a coffee shop, you go to a boba shop, and they have Instagram walls, and like people are transitioning traditional retail use to more experience type use. And I think that with the consumption lounges, you need to, not you, but people want to be at a place where they're not just sitting there, like you said, smoking and listening to some music, right? They want to have actual experiences. Again, I know it sounds cheesy, that Instagram walls, people like to drink, people like to eat when they're at lounges, people like to dance, right? All of those things to be considered in the future. But again, that's the best I can offer for your second question.
Yeah, just to reiterate, Dertrez says is correct. The pro forma, or your business plan, one is it's a budget, and you need to stick as close as you can to the numbers. So you want to make them realistically. Again, it gets back to if you haven't done your homework, and the number one reason that startup businesses, regardless of industry, that 90% fail is they're undercapitalized. So as I'm just throwing out as an example, you budget that you're going to need $100,000 to get through the first year. Well, then I would put that number at 300,000, 2 to 3 times, because there's so many unknown variables, as you mentioned. So you kind of have to budget for that, because they will happen, and they're going to come the first year and the second year. So whatever it is that you think that your cost of operation is going to result in that first year, at least double it of the capital.
I'm going to add to that a little bit. When starting any type of business, be it cannabis or otherwise, everyone wakes up and they say, hey, I want to start a business. I used to work for the Department of Taxation, and we hear that all the time coming through the door when they come and ask for a sales permit. They say, hey, I woke up, I had this great idea, I'm going to start this business, and I need a sales permit. And then you think, and you ask them these questions, well, what is your estimated gross revenue? Because that's a question that they're going to be asking when you ask for that sales permit. And they say, I don't know. And to go back to what the panelists were saying, is that planning is key to be successful in your business. So understanding that your cost of goods sold is very important, because now you need to build in your operating cost and the cost that it's going to take for you to acquire the products that you want to sell, and understanding the products that you are going to sell. Maybe that may take some time for you to just go back and take a step back and say, let me survey and understand what my customer base is going to be. Those things are important. And so constructing a business plan is not going to be realistic. A pro forma is just that. It is an estimated budget of what you think is going to take you to operate. And then whatever you think you need to build in a contingency for that, the 2 to 3 times that budget, whatever you think, times it by 3, just so you know that you are covered. And then that way, I know a lot of times, even with the Cannabis Compliance Board and the initial application process, we have a minimum that you should have coming in the door. That does not mean that that should be your minimum for your operating budget, because only you know what this spectacular idea is that you want to present to your clientele. And it may be more than that $250,000 that may be required as a part of your application process. It may be $1.5 million. And so understanding how, one, whoever you have investing into your business, how you plan on making that person whole, in addition to making money for the business, is going to be important. And so you have to plan it out. That is what a business plan is. So please don't skip that step of the process. Jason?
So there are some pretty rigid requirements in the NRS statutes, specifically that consumption modules must obtain the product from a retail dispensary, and adding that retailer in does cut in those profit margins. My question is, how can people take part in the process on some of those legislative requirements?
Great question, Jason. I say this, and if you ever attended a metric training, this is probably something that they have on repeat. Pretty much is that as the Cannabis Compliance Board, we are not doing anything but doing the work that has been laid out for us, right? And it's your business. And so when we get a bill or if we get a statute change, that's for us to enforce. We don't create them. We write the regulations to make it easier for licensees to adhere to them. But we're not making those legislative decisions. And a lot of those legislative decisions come directly from the industry. And so we recommend that if there's anything that is giving individuals heartburn, as I say, with the operators or licensees that may be looking to open up a business and you come into those roadblocks, speak to your legislatures. That is the process that you should take to say, hey, we have this great idea, but here are our roadblocks. And how can we meet in the middle, working with the Cannabis Compliance Board? Trust me, we have people that call us all the time and say, hey, this doesn't make sense. How can we work together to present something that is feasible for both? Because one, we do want you to make sure that you adhere to all of the federal, state, and local laws and regulations. But we also want you to win. Right? Because if you win, we win. So if it's something that you feel as though that, I always say it's a pain point. And I know there's many trying to stand up consumption lounges at this time. And just the cannabis establishments, period, just because of the federal roadblocks in this industry. Speak to your local legislatures, your legislators. They can open up doors that we cannot. And so if that's the road that you want to take, that's what we recommend. And let me add this, because we get these calls all the time, and I know that's why Jason brought it up, but we get calls and we get emails and saying, hey, why are you guys doing this like this? And we're like, we're not doing it. We have workshops. There's consortiums. There's things that go on outside of our office that collectively industry people get together and they say, hey, this is what we want to present. And they have someone sponsor the bill, and then they go and they try to get that bill passed. And let's be honest, sometimes there's part of industry that supports the bill, and there's some industry that people that may not support the bill. But those who speak up are the ones that get heard. So I implore you to speak up. Are there any other questions?
make a quick comment. So on your question about where, resources in the room, every city, Henderson, Las Vegas, North Las Vegas, can direct you to a small business development office that they have. I know I've dealt with the Hendersons in the past. Good resource. Your Chamber of Commerce, good resource. The Governor's Office of Economic Development, great resource. So there's resources out there. You have to search for them. The other thing is your lenders. A great thing about living in a competitive system, you get to shop around. And I highly recommend that because every lender is going to have their own criteria. They're going to have their own lending parameters. For example, One Nevada Credit Union, our lending window starts at a minimum loan amount of $1 million, goes up to a maximum of $6 million per loan. That's going to differ from lender to lender. So shop around, and when you're on the phone with that lender about what their terms, what their criteria is, their window, ask them for resources, because most of them will have a referral for you of where to go in certain areas, and because some banks specialize in business loans, the operating side of it. And so they'll have resources that they can recommend on helping you on the business plan and putting that pro forma budget together. So encourage you to call around, shop around.
I know everyone heard the term closed mouth don't get fed. This is the case here. If you feel like you've reached a roadblock, contact the CCB. Contact Clark County, contact City of Henderson, City of Las Vegas. They have many resources to direct you to if you are reaching roadblocks and fulfilling a dream. I know that there's a lot of entrepreneurs in this room, and this is an opportunity to make a difference for you and your families. We just want to make sure that we provide you with the best resources to help that dream come true. So ask all the questions. There's no question that's dumb. I know people, you hear that in the second grade. There is no dumb question. Ask the question. Trust me, you may be asking a question that someone else in the room may want to ask, but may just be a little bit afraid. And then also there's a lot of questions that come to us and they be like, that's a great question. And we post it on our website as a frequently asked question so that everyone is aware and that information is readily available. So don't hesitate to ask us. We're all in the room here. The team in the back, they showed up for you, just so that if you have any questions that you would like to ask them in person, because we all know it's hard to get people on the phone all the time. But this is an opportunity for you to ask those questions to those individuals in person. Does anyone have any other questions? All right, I want to thank our panelists, Michael and Dertrez, for coming out. Please take time to speak to them. I know that I did ask Michael to take a look and research some alternative financing, because we did understand that for him, his hands are a little bit tied due to the federal policy. However, he has a wealth of knowledge in the commercial lending space. He did bring some alternative lending information with him. So take time, talk to both him and Dertrez. Dertrez is knowledgeable in the commercial real estate space. He's, as he said, tried to work with multiple prospective clients, but soon learned that they only had smoke shop licenses and not cannabis licenses, which is very different. But they're both here to answer your questions. The audit team, inspection teams are here as well. So please take the time and have conversations with us before you leave the room. And if you have any other questions or anything that's piquing your interest, please stop by. Thank you.